Imagine being worth more than a luxury car, a house, or even a small business, but having absolutely zero control over your own life. Today, we're diving into one of the darkest chapters in American history to understand the brutal economics of slavery. And I need to warn you, these numbers aren't just shocking. They reveal how an entire economy was built on human suffering. Before we get into this, let me be crystal clear. We're discussing this not to sensationalize, but to understand the true scale of this horrific system and why its effects still echo through American society today. The numbers we're about to explore represent real people, mothers, fathers, children, who were treated as property. Let's never forget that. So here's something that might blow your mind. In 1860, just before the Civil War, the total value of enslaved people in the United States was estimated at around $3 billion. Now you might think, okay, that's a lot, but what does that really mean? Well, adjust that for inflation to today's money, and we're talking about roughly $75 to $100 billion. But even that doesn't capture the full picture, because enslaved people represented more wealth than all the railroads and factories in America combined. Think about that. Human beings were literally the single largest financial asset in the entire American economy. But let's break this down to the individual level, because that's where it gets even more disturbing. The price of an enslaved person varied wildly depending on several factors: age, gender, skills, health, and even appearance. In the early 1800s, an enslaved field worker might cost between $500 to $800. By the 1860s, that price had skyrocketed to between $1,200 and $1,800. In today's money, that's roughly $40,000 to $60,000 per person. But skilled enslaved people? They commanded premium prices. A blacksmith, carpenter, or someone with specialized training could be sold for $2,500 or more. That's over $80,000 today. And here's something that's absolutely gut-wrenching. Children as young as infants were bought and sold. Babies might be valued at $100 to $300, while teenagers entering their prime working years would fetch prices similar to adults. Now, slave owners didn't just see these prices as one-time purchases. They calculated the lifetime productivity of enslaved people like you'd calculate the return on investment for a piece of machinery. There are actual accounting ledgers from plantations where enslavers tracked every single output: pounds of cotton picked, hours worked, even the children born to enslaved women, because those children would become more property they could exploit or sell. Some historians estimate that over a lifetime of forced labor, an enslaved person generated wealth equivalent to several $100,000 in today's money for their enslaver. The domestic slave trade itself was a massive industry. After the international slave trade was banned in 1808, the internal market exploded. Traders would march enslaved people in chains from states like Virginia and Maryland down to the Deep South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, where the booming cotton industry created insatiable demand. These forced migrations tore apart an estimated 1 million families, and the traders, they were making enormous profits. Some of the wealthiest men in America made their fortunes buying human beings in one state and selling them in another. Here's where it gets even more complex. Enslaved people were used as collateral for loans. Banks in the North and South would lend money using enslaved people as security. If you defaulted on your loan, the bank could seize and sell the people you'd put up as collateral. Major financial institutions that still exist today were built partially on this system. Insurance companies would even issue policies on enslaved people. If they died or escaped, the enslaver could file a claim and get paid. The cotton economy that drove so much of this horror was global. British textile mills, northern factories, international traders, they all profited from cotton picked by enslaved hands. King Cotton, as it was called, made America an economic powerhouse, but that power was built on the backs of 4 million people who saw none of the wealth they created. And here's something most people don't realize. When slavery ended, enslavers demanded and sometimes received compensation, not for the people they'd tortured, but for their lost property. Meanwhile, the formerly enslaved received nothing, no reparations, no land, no financial support, just freedom on paper, in an economy that had spent 250 years ensuring they'd have no wealth to start with.
The wealth gap we see today between black and white Americans,
it has direct roots in this system. Generational wealth builds over time: property, inheritance, investments. Enslaved people were prohibited from accumulating any of this, while white families built fortunes that passed down through generations. Some estimates suggest that if enslaved people had been paid fair wages for their labor, the total owed would be in the trillions of dollars today. Understanding these numbers isn't about pointing fingers. It's about recognizing that slavery wasn't just morally wrong. It was an entire economic system that shaped the country we live in now. The infrastructure, the institutions, the wealth disparities, they all trace back to this period when human beings were treated as commodities with price tags. So the next time someone asks, why does this history still matter, remember these numbers. Remember that America's economic rise was fueled by unpaid labor extracted through violence and terror. Remember that fortunes were made, families were destroyed, and an entire race of people was systematically denied the ability to build wealth for centuries. If this video opened your eyes to something you didn't know before, hit that like button and subscribe. History isn't comfortable, but understanding it is essential. Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and let's keep this conversation going. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.